Thank you for joining us on our annual SU election forums. My name is Sanjampreet and I will be your host and facilitator for today. At this forum, we will meet our VP academic candidate Jessie Dinh for the 2024-25 academic year. Voting will take place from March 5th to March 7th on your student center. Over the course of this next 1 hour, I will be asking our VP academic candidate the questions about who they are, what they stand for, and what they know about this position so far. Audience members who might have any questions may speak to our candidate after the forum is over at 1 p.m. up until 2 p.m. Today, I also have Said, who is going to help us keep our time. Each question we ask will have a time limit. So, Jesse, please pay attention. The red paddle means that there are only 30 seconds remaining, and the black paddle means that the time is over. You should not speak over time, and we will move on to the next question once the time is over. So, Jesse, are you ready?
Yes.
Let's begin. Please go ahead and tell us who you are and what your campaign is all about.
Well, thank you for the introduction. My name is Jessie, and I'm a third-year kinesiology student. I have been privileged to spend the last 2 years as your kinesiology representative, and in those last 2 years, I was able to follow through with a couple of initiatives, including an inclusive gym, in which I believe that everyone should be able to do physical activity in a safe space, as well as garner some past sessions for two of our most difficult programs in kines, that being biomechanics 263 and 363, as well as gain a quality money grant to renovate a study space in kinesiology where students feel comfortable studying without having to move to a different building. In my VPA campaign, I look forward to supporting you through your education in 3 pillars. One, by supporting your education directly, and also growing your opportunities, as well as making learning accessible to you. By growing your opportunities, I look forward to fostering interdisciplinary research and growing those chances for you to perform research in not just your major, but gathering more different inclusive perspectives, as well as advocate for more collaborative spaces for you to study and work well with other people. In supporting your education, I look forward to investigating different grading systems that support your learning, as well as gathering your perspectives on hybrid teaching, and furthermore following up with the appropriate technologies for you to continue with hybrid learning. Finally, I would love to address learning accessibly and making sure that everyone on campus deserves a fair and equitable education. In this way, I want to have discussions with administration about flexible deadlines as well as alternative modes of assessment. And finally, with making learning accessible, I want to make sure all students are protected on campus, whether they are on practicums or internships or in other ways in exploring experiential learning.
Thank you for your answer, Jesse. With this, we will move on to round one. In round one, I'll be asking you questions based on your position, and you will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Are you ready?
Yes.
What do you believe is the biggest academic issue students currently face? And how do you plan to address that issue as a priority?
Thank you for your question. This is a question that depends on who you are as a student. I think it's really hard to label one academic issue as the most important and the biggest issue on campus. But in order to encapsulate it all into one, I think the largest current issue is the regulation of M1, which includes supporting documentation on campus. In the regulation, it does state that students have the discretion of choosing which supporting documentation they wish to provide to instructors when they have to miss classes or are asking for deferrals on exams. However, many professors or instructors do ask the student for certain documents such as a doctor's note, which is not always realistic to obtain during your circumstances. I think it's important to have these discussions on campus with administration, and that's how I would plan to approach that issue. And I would attend my committees with the idea in hand that I want to discuss this issue on campus to make sure students don't feel burdened or complicated whenever they're sick or they have an extenuating circumstance. As well, I would also love to book private one-on-one meetings with administration to make sure they understand that this is a crucial matter. And that way I could garner more detailed conversations with them and they could focus on the issue at hand.
Thank you for your answer, Jesse. Moving on to the next question. The VP academic sits on many committees and supports students in many different ways. Considering your busy schedule, it can be challenging to accomplish all of your platform goals. Walk us through one goal that you think is the most important to serve students and how you plan about going about to achieve this goal.
Thank you for the question. The beauty of being a VP academic is you sit on so many committees. And because of this, you are constantly around administration that can help you address the issues you have at hand. I think the one problem I'd love to discuss the most this year is the grading scale. I would love to be able to develop a consistent grading scale as well as a grading system that allows students to explore maybe rounding. And I think that this is a great time to have a discussion during committees. And since I sit on so many, it's a perfect opportunity for me to bring up the issue and they can address it right there and then. And if further needed, I could book meetings with them to discuss it further. But I am aware of the busy schedule, but I think I could use that to my abilities and the best of my abilities by using that time to address the issues I have.
Thank you so much. My next question is what is your current understanding of open education resources? And do you have any ideas on how the Students' Union and the UFC can better advocate for the adoption of these resources?
So open educational resources are methods of assisting instruction such as textbooks that are free to access online. And the reason they're open is to increase the accessibility you get by accessing these additional resources. We as students are already amidst an affordability crisis, and we shouldn't be forced to pay for such expensive textbooks when we already pay for tuition and supplementary fees and maybe even rent, and we just have already so many things on our plate. We shouldn't have to spend another few $100s on textbooks. Open educational resources are great ways for professors to include additional resources without having to burden their students with the cost. They're very important in that way, but also I think that the approach I would take to implement them would be primarily through the bookstore. I think the bookstore is a great way to start initiating conversation about using additional resources, and the way we approach it through the bookstore could be a great way for us to start implementing more OERs into our system.
Thank you, Jesse. Moving on, what do you think is the most important committee that a VPS sits on, whether at the SU or at the university, and why?
That's a good question. Thank you. I think the most important committee, though hard to choose because all of them are so important, is the one under General Faculties Council, the Teaching and Learning Committee. I think that one is really the crux of all the other committees. It's the most broad, but also specific, but in a way that you can bring up issues that matter the most to students. As the name suggests, teaching and learning, it's a great space for you to be able to discuss issues that students may have in courses, and the way we approach teaching and learning could really affect the quality of education that students obtain. And so in the Teaching and Learning Committee, I think I'd be able to bring up the way we approach teaching and learning and also the results of the way we approach teaching and learning and whether or not they benefit students or if there is room for improvement.
Thank you for your answer, Jesse. As a VPA, you would regularly receive emails from fellow students about unfair in course assessments or final exams. How would you guide a fellow student who needs assistance in resolving these kinds of issues?
Thank you. I think the most important thing is understanding the regulation. even as a student myself, it's difficult for me to understand the policy wording, and sometimes regulations are worded in a way where it's really difficult to understand what's expected of us as students. And I think that the first thing I would do is do my own research. I would read the email to see what the concerns are, and I would find the regulation in our policy to make sure that no very specific rules are being broken. And that way, I would then share with them the regulation and tell them what their student rights are on campus. And I would support them through the journey of speaking to whoever is relevant in this issue, whether that's an associate dean, a dean, or even just the instructor themselves. And I would support them in that way to make sure that they themselves are able to lead their own growth and make sure that they can solve their own issues, because it's important to be knowledge.
Thank you, Jesse. One of the primary functions of SU is advocacy work. What is your understanding of the way SU advocates for students within the VP academic portfolio?
Advocacy is extremely important. We can't get anything done without advocacy. The VP academic portfolio is quite internal, and I work the most with the provost or those that are in the teaching and learning kind of branch. And I think advocacy in that way is bringing light and attention to the academic issues that students have on campus. A lot of the times, administration won't even know what's going on with students, and they won't understand what students are struggling through unless someone brings it up to them. And advocacy in that way is me making sure that they are aware of the issues, and not just that, but that they are appropriately addressed and eventually, hopefully, solved.
Okay, Jesse. Advocating for students' needs would require the VPA to frequently hold opposing views with the key university staff and the administration that they regularly work with. How do you intend to balance your working relationship with these key personnel while doing your best to advocate for students?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Advocating for students' needs would require the VPA to frequently hold opposing views with the key university staff and administration that they regularly work with. How do you intend to balance your working relationship with these key personnel while doing your best to advocate for the students if you get elected?
I think it's very common in everything we do in life to have opposing views and perspectives. Obviously, the ones that I'm advocating for the student perspective, can often be battled against by administration. The same thing goes for them. I'm sure there's regulation that administration would like me to know that I necessarily can't understand as an opinion of the student. But it's important to respect each other's opinions. And of course, whether they think that I'm wrong or I think that they're wrong, at the end of the day, the best interests are the students. I'm here to work for the students, and they're here to also make sure that learning is fair and great for the students as well. So at the end of the day, we both have the same goal, and I'm sure we'll be able to work around our disagreements to make sure that at the end of the day, education is a quality education.
Thank you for your answer. Policies and procedures at the university are essential, but can be complicated for students to navigate. Where can important policy that impacts students be found, and how would you go about achieving change in policy or procedure?
Regulation can be found in many places, which makes it complicated for students to understand what is applicable to them. But for one, the university calendar does reveal a list of regulation that students or that would apply to students and students should reference. But also the university is, well, we as a students union are working on a student bill of rights, which we're trying to get the university to commit towards. And I think in that way, that is a perfect document for students to reference whenever they have a variety of different issues on campus and they need to know what regulation applies to them and what specific rules they need to follow. I'm currently in the process of trying to advocate for us to renew and publish our Student Bill of Rights. And I think that it's important then if the university decides or agrees to commit to them, that that is a perfect way for students to know what regulation there is.
Thank you for your answer, Jesse. We'll move on to round two. This is the speed round, and I'll be asking objective knowledge based questions, and you would have 30 seconds to answer them. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Starting off, what does CFIWG, commonly pronounced as CIFWIC, mean?
Course Feedback Implementation Working Group.
That is correct. My next question is, what does APS mean?
Academic Program Subcommittee.
That is correct. Okay, Jesse. The third question is, who chairs the General Faculties Council? And for bonus points, who is the vice chair?
The chair would be the university president, Ed McCulley, and the vice chair would be our provost, Penny Werthner.
That is correct. Moving on to the next question, who is the lead SU student member on the General Faculties Council? And what is their responsibility to the SLC in this leadership?
I believe that would be the VP Academic Portfolio. They are the ones that represent the entirety of students as well as the representatives, one from each faculty that sits on GFC. And the responsibilities that come with that is to make sure students are aware of the types of conversations that administration is having at General Faculties Council and making sure it's communicated appropriately.
Okay. Uh, okay, so VP Academic indeed leads the student member on the GFC, and they also brief the SLC on the upcoming GFC meetings. My next question is, what committee advises the GFC on students' educational experience?
I'm honestly not sure. Is it the Teaching and Learning Committee?
Indeed, it is. Okay, Jesse. The last question for round two is, who chairs the GFC's calendar and curriculum subcommittee?
That would be our registrar, Amy Dambrowitz.
Along with the registrar, there is also one academic co-chair. Uh, let's move on to round three. Round three is based on critical thinking, and it will be targeted based on your platform, as well as scenarios that you might face as a VP academic. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So in your platform, you state that you will initiate a conversation to establish a grading system that allows rounding. Please tell us where this idea came from and how do you think that it could potentially affect students? You have 3 minutes.
In terms of where the idea came from, I think we've all grown up in math classes where we round to the nearest zero 0.5 decimal place. So I thought, why is it that our grading scale does not do that? The steps that I'm taking towards this issue is I've actually started preliminary conversation already within the Faculty of Kinesiology, and our associate dean has been greatly helpful in educating me on the rules and regulations behind grading scales and grading systems. Currently, this university does not have a specific regulation on rounding of grades. It is faculty based, and most often written in the course outline by the associate dean academic of each faculty. Because I've already started preliminary conversations, I'm very comfortable having and continuing these conversations out to other faculties, and I feel as if this creates a productive internal conversations with each faculty as well. I know that kinesiology is already talking about it internally, and I think that other faculties are starting to. And in this way, it will start internal discussion on how to approach this. And I think that I'd be able to potentially have meetings with provosts as well about this issue.
Thank you for your answer, Jesse. Moving on to the next question. In your platform, you state that you will ensure that all students are protected on campus and in experiential learning opportunities, including practicums, internships, study abroad, and more. Please explain what you mean by protected and how you will go about ensuring that this happens, knowing that the VPA personally cannot make applicable decisions on their own. You have 3 minutes.
This campaign platform is focused on experiential opportunities that can happen on or off campus. This includes practicums that you might find in the Faculty of Nursing or the Faculty of Education, but also internships in most faculties and even study abroads. In this way, they're still students at the University of Calgary, and they deserve to be protected in that way. I've noticed that over the past year, there's a lot of incidents and reports that have involved the Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Office, and even just being a study abroad student, you're in a different country, and it's hard to be protected by your home university when you're basically across the globe. And so I think that protecting the students should definitely be a priority of this university, especially when the students are not in the same proximity as one might be as a regular University of Calgary student. Protection and experiential opportunities is incredibly important in this day and age because of the influx of the ways we communicate with each other. And oftentimes, students in practicums and internships can be overlooked because we don't think of them as being on campus, and it's honestly difficult to communicate with them, and really the only methods are online. And so I think including policies and discussions about protecting them on and off campus is incredibly important. And I hope that I'll be able to collaborate with the sexual and gender-based office, as well as like many other offices on campus, in order to make sure that this issue is definitely addressed.
Thank you for your answer. My last question will be a scenario based question based on experiences that a VP academic might come across. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. A student has been receiving assistance and advice from you for the past month on their academic appeal. You have provided them with as much support as possible, but unfortunately, their appeal was denied. The student is extremely agitated and is now in your office, visibly upset, and is demanding you to do something to change this decision. How do you approach this situation?
This is a very good question and a tough situation because it depends on what the issue is. Certain issues may involve certain offices on campus, and some issues might just be one from your instructor that you were frustrated with, which is definitely understandable as well. In this way, it's difficult, but the first thing I would do is console the student and make sure they're okay. I want to make sure that they're feeling better by the end of the day and that their discussions and opinions are heard. It is important to make sure the students always feel heard and their issues are incredibly valid. After that, I would talk to them about where they might want to move forward and if they have any particular ideas. And if not, then I would suggest that maybe we go forward to the appropriate contacts. If that's someone like an office on campus, such as the Sexual and Gender Based Violence Office or the Student Conduct Office, then I would definitely support them in their outreach to those offices, and I would help them potentially draft an email, or even if they needed moral support in the office, I'd come with them. Aside from that, if the issue does not involve a certain office on campus, then I would help them draft a further email or maybe plan another meeting with a dean or an associate dean that might help them get to the bottom of this issue. But at the end of the day, it does depend on the issue. And this is a very nuanced question because it's hard to give a solid one answer when I don't know what the issue is.
Thank you so much for your answer, Jesse. Uh, Now, the candidate will get 1 minute to make a final pitch. Why should the student body vote for you?
As Naomi quoted yesterday during her forum, aside from being your only candidate, I think I deserve to be your VP academic because I have proven over the past 2 years that I've been able to make things happen and a very actionable person. As a kinesiology representative, I was able to complete plenty of actionable items that I thought have been unique to the faculty, and I think I can bring that same leadership skill to the VP academic portfolio. Aside from that, I believe that I can learn much more from the students as well. And besides from me influencing the students, I would love to hear what the students could teach me because I am here to learn as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming. Please vote on March 5th to March 7th online on your student center. This marks the end of today's forum. These students will be representing you next year, so please ensure that you are using your voice to choose who these people are. If you have questions for your VPA candidate Jesse, please address them at the back tables or you could reach out to them. The candidate information is available on the SU website, and you could follow our social media handles to keep up with this election. Please meet us again on March 4th, where we will have our presidential forum, and both our presidential candidates will be making an appearance. Thank you all for joining us.